Chapter 1: The World of Heroes. It started in Qingqing City, China. A newborn baby, glowing softly, was the first recorded case of a human possessing superhuman abilities. It didn't take long for similar phenomena to appear worldwide. Within a few decades, these superpowers, later called quirks, became a defining trait of humanity. Roughly 80% of the population now had some form of unique ability. Quirks shaped the world in ways no one could have imagined. Laws changed, societies adapted, and the concept of heroes, once relegated to comic books and movies, became reality. Professional heroes emerged, licensed by governments to protect civilians from the growing threat of supervillains. For many, it was a golden age. But for others, the 20% who were quirkless, it was an era of exclusion. Izuku Midoriya was one of those left behind. Quirkless, the doctor had said when Izuku was just 4 years old. The word hung over him like a storm cloud, following him through every stage of his life. No matter how hard he tried to ignore it, he couldn't escape the looks of pity from strangers, the quiet judgment of his classmates, or the overwhelming weight of his own disappointment. But despite everything, Izuku dreamed of becoming a hero. At 14 years old, he sat at his desk, hunched over a well-worn notebook labeled Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. The pages were filled with detailed notes on pro-heroes, diagrams of their costumes, analyses of their quirks, and theories about their battle strategies. All Might's punches generate shockwaves strong enough to knock out villains from a distance, he muttered to himself, scribbling furiously. But his movements are always calculated to minimize collateral damage. Amazing. His small room was covered in posters and action figures of All Might, the world's #1 hero. To Izuku, All Might wasn't just a hero. He was the symbol of hope. A sudden knock on the door broke his concentration. "Izuku, dinner's ready," his mother called. "Coming, Mom." Izuku replied, quickly shutting his notebook and setting it aside. The next day, the classroom was buzzing with excitement. "All right, settle down," their teacher said, waving a stack of papers. "It's career day, so let's talk about your futures. Of course, most of you want to be heroes, right?" The class erupted in cheers, with students eagerly showing off their quirks. One boy stretched his fingers to unnatural lengths, while another created tiny explosions in his palm. Calm down, the teacher chuckled. "I know you're all excited, but let's focus. Bakugo, I see you've put down UA High School as your goal." Katsuki Bakugo smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Of course. I'm not wasting my time on some second-rate school." The class murmured in agreement. UA High School was the most prestigious hero academy in the country, known for producing top-tier heroes. "Midoriya, you've written UA as well," the teacher said, raising an eyebrow. The room went silent. All eyes turned to Izuku, who shrank in his seat. He felt the weight of their stares, their judgment, their laughter just waiting to erupt. "Yeah, right," Bakugo sneered. "Deku. In UA. That's a joke." I just thought," Izuku stammered, gripping the edge of his desk. "You don't even have a quirk." Bakugo snapped, his voice dripping with disdain. "What are you gonna do, Deku? Take notes while the rest of us save the day." The classroom burst into laughter. Izuku's face burned with humiliation, but he didn't say a word. The school day ended, and Izuku packed his things quickly, avoiding Bakugo's gaze. He knew better than to stick around when Bakugo was in a bad mood. The streets of Musudafu were busy as usual, with people going about their day. Izuku kept his head down, clutching his notebook tightly to his chest. "Why do I even bother?" he muttered to himself. "No one thinks I can do it, not even me." As he walked, he passed by a television store. The screens in the window displayed breaking news footage of a hero battling a villain in the city center. People gathered to watch, cheering as the hero subdued the villain with ease. Izuku stopped, his eyes glued to the screen. Despite everything, he couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. "I'll find a way," he whispered. "I have to." As he turned a corner, something caught his eye. A faint green glow emanated from a narrow alleyway. Izuku hesitated. The alley looked dark and uninviting, but the strange light drew him in. His curiosity got the better of him, and he stepped closer. At the center of the alley, embedded in the ground, was an emerald-like object. It pulsed with energy, casting an eerie glow on the surrounding walls. "What is this?" Izuku muttered, crouching down. He reached out, his hand trembling. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, the world seemed to explode. The world around Izuku vanished in a blinding flash of green light. For a moment, everything was silent. Then came the sound of rushing wind, like a hurricane roaring in his ears. His heart pounded as he realized the ground beneath him was gone. He was moving, no, he was running, faster than he thought possible. What's happening?" Izuku yelled, his voice barely audible over the deafening wind. The city streets blurred around him. Cars, people, and buildings whipped past in streaks of color, their shapes unrecognizable. His legs moved on their own, carrying him forward at an unimaginable speed. Every step felt light, effortless, yet impossibly powerful. Instinctively, he dodged a truck that appeared out of nowhere, his body twisting midair before landing smoothly on the other side of the street. It wasn't just speed, it was precision, reflexes, and balance, all heightened to levels he couldn't comprehend. "I need to stop," Izuku cried, panicking as his momentum increased. He tried to dig his heels into the ground, but it was no use. His feet barely touched the pavement before launching him forward again. Finally, his toe caught on a raised edge of the sidewalk, sending him tumbling into a nearby park. He rolled several times before slamming into a tree. The impact knocked the wind out of him, leaving him gasping for air as he lay sprawled on the grass. For several minutes, Izuku didn't move. His chest heaved as he stared up at the sky, trying to process what had just happened. "That wasn't normal," he muttered, his voice shaky. Slowly, he sat up, wincing as he checked for injuries. To his surprise, he felt fine, no bruises, no cuts, not even the faintest hint of pain. It was as if his body had absorbed the impact. "What is this?" he whispered, staring down at his hands. They tingled faintly, a sensation like static electricity running through his veins. The memory of the emerald flashed in his mind. Could that strange object have given him this power? But why? And how? "Oh. I need to figure this out," Izuku said, determination flickering in his chest. He stood, brushing dirt off his uniform, and took a cautious step forward. The moment his foot touched the ground, his body surged forward again. "Ah," he yelped, flailing his arms as he skidded to a stop against a park bench. Okay, he muttered, steadying himself. "Think, Izuku. You have power now. You just need to learn how to control it." As Izuku made his way home, at a much slower pace, he couldn't stop grinning. For the first time in his life, he felt hope. He had power now. Real power. Maybe he could finally become a hero, just like All Might. When he arrived at his apartment, his mother greeted him with her usual warm smile. "Welcome home, Izuku. Dinner's almost ready." "Thanks, Mom," Izuku said, slipping off his shoes. "I'll be in my room for a bit." Once inside, he grabbed his notebook and began jotting down everything he could remember about the experience. Source of power, emerald-like object. Abilities, super speed, enhanced reflexes, durability. Questions, why did it choose me? How do I control it? As he wrote, his hand trembled with excitement. For years, he had dreamed of being a hero, and now, for the first time, that dream felt within reach. The next morning, Izuku walked to school with the spring in his step. He hadn't mastered his new power yet, but he felt more confident than he had in years. That confidence was quickly shattered when a loud explosion echoed through the streets. People screamed and ran as a towering villain made of sludge barreled through the crowd, knocking over cars and smashing windows. Heroes were on the scene, but they hesitated, unsure how to approach the volatile creature. Izuku froze, his heart pounding. The villain was massive, its ooze-like body twisting and expanding as it absorbed objects in its path. "This guy's no joke," one of the heroes muttered. "We need someone with ranged attacks." Amid the chaos, Izuku spotted a familiar figure trapped in the villain's grasp. His heart sank. Kaken. Bakugo struggled against the sludge, his explosions doing little to free him. The villain laughed, tightening its grip. "Stay back, kid," a hero shouted as Izuku took a step forward. "It's too dangerous." But Izuku couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. His legs felt like they were made of lead. Kaken's going to die. Then, without thinking, Izuku's body moved on its own. Izuku didn't remember making the decision to move. One moment he was frozen in fear, and the next, he was sprinting toward the towering villain. His legs carried him forward faster than he thought possible, the ground beneath him a blur. "Get back here, kid," the hero shouted, but Izuku ignored them. His eyes were locked on Bakugo, who was still thrashing against the sludge, his explosions growing weaker with every passing second. "Kaken's going to die if I don't do something." Izuku didn't have a plan. He didn't know how to fight a villain. All he had was this strange new power, and he was going to use it, no matter what. The villain turned just as Izuku approached, its grotesque face twisting into a grin. "Another one." "How annoying," it sneered, a tendril of sludge lashing out toward him. But Izuku was faster. He dodged to the side, the tendril whipping harmlessly past him. He zigzagged through the debris, his movements erratic and unpredictable, until he was directly in front of the villain. "Get away from him!" Izuku shouted, grabbing a piece of rubble from the ground and hurling it with all his strength. The rock struck the villain square in the eye, causing it to roar in pain. Bakugo gasped for air as the sludge loosened its grip on him slightly. "You little brat," the villain snarled, turning its full attention to Izuku. Izuku's heart raced as he dodged another tendril, his mind scrambling for a solution. He couldn't overpower the villain, but maybe he could distract it long enough for the heroes to act.